Hello and welcome to It Came From 20,000 Podcasts. I'm one of your hosts, Gus.
I'm Caitlin.
And we are back after moving a house.
Well, okay, let's be real.
I moved it with my arms.
We moved a house, and then that took a while, and then we got incredibly sick.
Yeah.
And when I say incredibly sick, I mean I had both a bacterial strep infection and a viral infection at the same time.
I had the viral infection and the doctor was pretty sure I had strep too. Not COVID, so.
No, but man, I kid you not, yesterday was the first time I didn't feel like hell in over a month.
It's been rough.
It was like, my throat's still a little shitty. Like, if I'm doing one of these or I cough or something, I apologize. I was very fucking sick.
It's like we moved in, we got all this stuff figured out. It's like, all right, let's get back to doing the podcast kind of soon.
Yeah.
No.
Like, I woke up and I was like, oh, my throat hurts. And then I was fucking sick as shit. Like, we had to miss Judas Priest, which was sad.
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna go see Judas Priest and Sabaton. We had to miss it.
Yeah, we were like 2-3 weeks from seeing it, and I was like, oh, we'll be fine. We got to it, we were still sick. It was horrible. And not like, oh, I can still record a podcast, I'm congested sick. Oh, no, dear friends. Like, I couldn't talk. I was like, it was horrible. But we're back, and we finally got back to Tarantula, the movie I picked 4 goddamn months ago, or whatever the last one was.
And if things sound a little different, it's because we're in a house with tile flooring on here, so it might be a little echoey. We have different microphones, and we have a dog.
Yeah,
Hi, Sadie.
we can always, if this is too echoey, we can probably move to the office next time where there's carpet. We just decided to try in here first. And if that, oh, buddy, what's wrong? The cat is meowing. But yeah, now we have a dog.
Her name's Sadie, and I love her.
She's very good. Anyway, Tarantula, directed by Jack Arnold in 1955.
I wasn't born then.
No, me either. I was born many, many years later. Like 40 of them. No, more like 38 of them. But no. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. I was born in 1993. Shut up, I can do math.
My dad wasn't even born then. I bought this movie on Amazon for $5.
Yeah.
And, I should say digitally on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And the cover art shows it with an exclamation point. The name of it in the listing doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't on IMDb either, but I've seen it with the exclamation point. I've seen it without. Now, let me explain to you why I wanted to watch this movie, okay? Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Animal Planet.
Most kids were.
Like, Animal Planet was, like, my fucking home jams, okay? Like, every morning before school, every night after school. And they used to do this special, oh my god, the cat. They used to do this if you can hear him, I'm sorry. They used to do this special where it would be, like, top 100 movie animals. And number one was, like, fucking Lassie. And I remember, like, Rin Tin Tin was in there. But there was this movie, and it always showed this tarantula, like, climbing through a city and people, like, pointing at it or something. This is what my kid brain remembers. I don't think this was that movie. I can't find... I've tried everything. This must be, because this is the only giant tarantula movie I can find. But I kid you not. My brain remembers a tarantula climbing through, like, a city and people being like, ah, and, like, running away from it. But maybe my kid brain is wrong and this is the movie. I'll never know, but that's why I wanted to watch this, because my childhood I wanted to watch it. Also, I just fucking love tarantulas. I was trying to identify this tarantula like 6 times through the movie. Pretty sure it's probably just some fucking rosy hair tarantula, but like, I got a lot of notes.
I referred to the tarantula throughout this movie consistently as Rancho.
I did too. We might want to explain why.
If you ever watched the My Brother and Me TV show, they have an episode about tarantulas where they rebrand them to be more family friendly and appealing, and they call them Ranchos.
Yeah, so in my notes, I also called them Ranchos a lot.
In my life, I just called them Ranchos.
Yeah, it just made it a lot faster. So let's get into this movie. It was pretty good, actually, but let's get into it. So the intro music starts, and it's fucking sweet.
The music in this movie is really good.
It's actually really good, but there's like no credits at first, and I was like, what? No credits? The cat is having a time. No credits. Oh, but the movie was cool and it set up some suspense.
Because so many of these movies just start off with, like, here's the title, here's all the credits at the front.
Hmm.
But this one, you get a minute or so of build-up.
Yeah,
Then the title's coming.
yeah, you get a little bit of build up before the title comes in, which I think was kind of nice because you open on what I described as a desert-ass desert.
I wrote start in the desert.
Whoop.
I
Yeah,
also wrote there's some dusty roads, and I spelled it like the wrestler.
of course you did. But there's like a guy running, like stumbling through. I almost said running. He was not running. He was decidedly doing the opposite of running.
Stumbling around. I thought he was maybe drunk.
He falls down. It zooms in on him. I thought he was wearing clothes from a prison
I thought so too. I said he's dressed like Beetlejuice. Wearing
because
some striped pajamas.
he's wearing striped pajamas. I thought they were supposed to be like prison garb. No, they were in fact pajamas.
Some Jim Jams.
Some jammies.
And then turns it over. We see his face, and he looks like Wolfman.
He did look like Wolfman. I put like monster face. Like it's not a humanoid face, which is weird because when we see somebody that's afflicted with this later, spoiler alert, he has a much more human face. This just like straight up looks like the Wolfman.
Yeah.
Like, what? There's some birds that also are flying above him. They're supposed to be vultures. They're just some bird-ass birds. They're just like some ravens. But it's clearly supposed to show that like he died. But they don't look like vultures, and I had to put it in because I thought it was really funny.
And then this is where we get the title card with some more sweet ass music playing.
Yeah, we get some sweet music. And it really did add kind of the suspense because, again, the suspense, I can speak. Because we usually do get, okay, music, credits, and then voiceover. But we didn't get any voiceover this time.
Yeah, no voiceover.
Like, it just... I really like that it kind of amped up the tension with that credit pause. Also, there was something I loved, and I had to put it in. Did you notice that instead of special effects, they used to use the term special photography?
I didn't notice.
Yeah,
that.
it had special photography, and then it had a guy's name listed that I wish I would have taken down. And I don't know, I really like that. Anyway, so a biplane. Actually, no, was it a biplane? It only had whatever.
Like single seater plane.
Yeah,
Maybe like 2 people.
It's like a biplane, like a crop duster style plane. Lands in the desert, but every time it hits the ground, it makes this weird like noise.
I think they're going for the tire screeches, but it's just kind of funny.
They were definitely going for the tires screeching as it hit the ground, but it wasn't like a tire screeching sound. It was like an sound. And then. I kid you not, a man that should not have gotten out of a plane like this just steps out of this plane. He is like perfect suit, a briefcase, his hair is combed over perfectly. He looks so clean and prim and proper.
So, question here. Did you think that he was a passenger in the plane, or did you, like me, think he flew the plane?
No, he flew the plane. There was no one else that got out of that plane. He flew that plane.
I was wondering if we just didn't see him, but he just like
no.
He did not look like he should be flying a plane.
No, multiple times we see him with that plane. He's flying the plane. There is no one else. He gets out of the plane. He tells the mechanic to look it over. It's clearly his plane.
He also tells the mechanic he calls the plane the ship.
He does call the plane the ship, which is really weird. But this guy's like a small town doctor. He mentions later that he had flown to Phoenix at some point. So I think he flies between the two for whatever reason. But I thought it was clearly his plane. Also, he gets out of the plane, tells the guy to like take care of my ship. Then he gets into a convertible.
That's just right there.
It's just right there. And it's like already started for him and everything. I thought it was a Cadillac. No, it turns out it's like a Ford or something. But like, this man be important. He has a plane. He's driving around in the desert. In a fucking convertible. Why should we drive convertibles through the desert?
Dusty.
Yeah, a lot of dust. Anyway.
So the town is also called Desert Rock.
Yeah, it's a generic town name.
That's what ZZ Top plays.
Yeah, Desert Rock. Stupid. We know it's in Arizona because they mention it at some point. It's like 200 miles away from Phoenix.
Yeah.
So we know it's like that sort of like desert Arizona area. So the doctor goes into what we know is his office. His name is on the door. His name is Matthew Hastings. I'm just gonna call him Hastings. I didn't call him Matt or Matthew.
I called him Doc for the longest time.
I called him Doctor, but I know the professor later has a name, but I only called him the professor. It's Professor Bremer. We'll meet him later.
Deemer.
Oh, is it Deemer?
Yeah.
Deemer. But I kept just calling him the professor, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
For about the first half of this movie, everyone's just like their job title.
I didn't know the sheriff's name for a long time. So he goes to his office. The sheriff is calling for him. Yep. So he's like...
Sheriff Jack.
Yeah, Sheriff Jack, which I did not realize his name was Jack for a long time. He's like, come down to the station. And he's like, I just got to tell... He literally... I kid you not, this man has literally walked through the door of his office, like literally said hi to his reception desk man. It's not a woman for once in one of these movies. Yeah, his clerk.
I think it was Josh, was it?
Josh, yeah. He literally has walked into his office, turned around, and left. Like, this man has no time to shit.
I just...
What?
Just no time to shit. Just got me. Also, like, everyone knows him in this town. I was like, hi, Doc. Hey, Doc. Hi, Doc.
Well, it's a town of maybe, I would say 200 people.
Yeah.
Maybe. Also, I had to write this down because it made me laugh. So, he's talking to Josh, his, I guess we'll call him clerk, because I don't want to call him a receptionist. That seems weird for some reason. Did you notice there was just a dude with a cowboy hat staring at the doctor, smiling for like a good 30 seconds?
No, I missed that.
Oh, yeah, there was just like this fucking weirdo staring at them, smiling with a cowboy hat on. He didn't move at all.
I just kept thinking, oh, the clerk kind of looks like Larry David.
He did, rather. So... sorry. The sheriff. He gets to the sheriff's office. Police. Yeah. And he's like, "You're never gonna fucking believe what we found out there, man. Never gonna believe it. It was this guy. He looks like a fucking monster, man. We think it's a guy by the name of Jacobs.
He's a bass player from Lordy.
Yeah, Eric Jacobs. He's a biologist, and." The sheriff is like, we need you to look at this body because it's fucking whack, okay? The sheriff's like... Also, the sheriff just kept asking the doctor if he knew people. He was like, do you know this guy? Do you know that guy? How about that guy?
Well, he knows everyone else in the town.
And the sheriff would just... And, like, the sheriff... Dr. Hastings would be like, yeah, I met him last year. Yeah, I met him 4 months ago. Yeah. He was a friend of mine. Like, he knows everybody.
Like, all right, we gotta go to the Undertaker so you can look at this guy.
Yeah.
They stop by Kane's on the way?
Yeah. So, the coroner... shows Dr. Hastings the body. The Hastings looks at it, and he's like, what the fuck? And he's like, it's the disease. And you're like, the disease? Should we know what the disease is? And he's like, well, this man would have had to have the disease for years, but I saw him 4 months ago, and he was fine. And you're like, what's the disease?
This is also the 5th location we've been to in like 5 minutes.
It is, in fact. These old
this
movies...
movie kicks off and just...
This movie just goes from the beginning. There's no boring build-up. Like, some of these movies will have 20, 30 minutes of, like, and now we go here, and we talk to some people. And then we go here and talk to some people. This movie's just like, dead body, boom, hi, let's go.
It's like, all right, we gotta get to the next plot point. Let's get through all the boring stuff.
Yeah, like, so... He's like, he's fine. So then another guy that, like, works... this is the professor.
Well, there was also the Undertaker. His name was Barry.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Which all I could think of was the wrestler Undertaker just Barry.
Well, they all look... this is going to sound terrible. It's black and white. They're all wearing, like, the same fucking style of suit. They all have combed over goddamn brown-ass brown hair. Like...
Oh, there's a point later on where I was like, yeah, the doctor's doing this, do this. It's like 5 minutes into the scene, like, oh, that's a professor.
Yeah.
I have to go back and change all my notes. It is harder to tell when it's all just a bunch of middle-aged to old white guys in suits.
With all brown hair. Like, sometimes they can be a little hard to keep straight. So this guy comes in, he looks at the body, and he's like, fuck yeah, that's him. He doesn't really say that. He's like...
fuck yeah, that's my dead friend I've known for 30 years.
Yeah, he's like, I've known this guy for 30 years. This is, in fact, Professor Deemer. Yep. He's like, I've known this man for 30 years. Who Jacobs worked for as a biologist. They're both biologists. Yep. One is a professor. Jacobs was like his lab assistant type of guy, like the second doctor in his lab.
Partner.
Yeah.
They worked together.
Yeah, they worked together. And he's like, yep, totally him. And the sheriff was like, what the fuck was wrong with this dude? Why is he looking like a monster-ass monster? And
because of his monster disease.
yeah, and the professor's like, oh, no. We know what's wrong with him. We knew what he had, but we couldn't help him. The sheriff's like, what the fuck's wrong with him? The professor's like, okay, we know what's wrong with him, but we couldn't help him. This disease is incurable. It's called acromalagia?
Acromalagia is... That's what I had.
Acromalagia? Something like that.
I had acromalagia.
Something like that. Yeah, it's a fake disease.
It's acro, that's the spider part. That's what you need to know.
No. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't connect to the spider at all.
I know, that's what I think was like acro, spiders.
Okay. Anyway, they say it's like where the pituitary gland goes insane. It morphs your facial features in your hands. It usually takes years for it to get to the point where Jacobs had it. But he only started complaining of things like 4 days ago and morphed that morning. So, what? He apparently got delirious the night before. He wandered out into the desert. He doesn't have any family because motherfuckers never do in these movies. And the doctor's like, there's no fucking way. There's no way he had acromalagia. And the sheriff's like, dude, let it go. He definitely did. Like, whatever.
And then Hastings is like, well, let me perform an autopsy on him. I gotta learn more about this. And the professor's like, no autopsy.
No autopsy.
Nothing.
Just bury it.
Just bury him. There's nothing more we need to do. This dude's hiding something.
Yeah, it's like real, like, he's like, no need to do an autopsy. That's what he died of. Bye. So the professor goes home, where he has a lab that is literally just open to the rest of his home. No doors. It's literally just like you walk from the hallway through like an archway and he's in his lab.
It's like where most places would have like your living room or dining room. It's just his lab.
Yeah, it's like if you walk into our house, there is literally like a open doorway from our living room to our kitchen. It's like that. Yeah. Like there's no door separating it. It's full of animals. He grabs a syringe but he has to like put his hands into this box and like fill it. Because whatever it is really powerful. We'll talk about what it is later. I got some fucking thoughts about it.
It's like a like one of those glass boxes with like the gloves in it so you can reach in.
Yeah, or like if you ever see like an incubator where you put a baby where you have to like reach in with gloves to like touch the baby. It's kind of like that sort of thing. Like clearly whatever is inside this is very dangerous and you don't want to touch it for some reason.
One thing about this was the camera work they had on it when they first revealed the box. Like when you see it from the front, you just see some white-ass box. Can't really tell what it is. But when you have the camera, it goes over the professor's shoulder, tracks over to the overhead view of the box so we can see inside, see his gloves and what he's doing there. Which, you don't see shots like that too often in the 50s. Especially in these kinds of movies.
You really don't. Especially because in this box is literally just one little beaker. Yeah. That's full of liquid.
It's a beaker and a syringe.
And yeah, it actually does. It tracks over the shoulder into the box. Like, they didn't have a lot of camera movement then, so when you would see it, like when we talked about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it would be like really cool to see. It stands out. It stands out a lot more.
And it's not nearly as crazy as all those fucking whip pans and
oh god, those goddamn whip pans. Oh boy.
Monsanto.
Yeah. So, yeah, he pulls out this syringe and he starts going over to all these animals that are making like a huge racket. But along the wall, there are two animals that fucking killed me at first. There is the biggest rat you've ever seen in a cage. And when I say the biggest rat you've ever seen, I'm talking it's the size of like a crock pot. No, bigger than a crock pot. It's like
the size of a microwave.
Yeah, maybe even bigger than that. It's huge. And then next to it, I thought it was a capybara at first. No, it's a guinea pig that's even bigger. It's like the size of a trash can. It's huge.
I thought it was like the size of... I thought the guinea pig was like the size of an actual pig, and it was making noises like an actual pig.
Yeah, it was making like oink noises, which like, do they not know the sound that a guinea pig makes? Because it isn't an oink noise.
I'd be interested to know how they did these shots too, because like the professor's like walking in front.
Clearly, what they must have done. I took a lot of film courses in high school where we studied this sort of filming in like the 50s, 60s. What they probably did was filmed the animals separately. And then just projected them forward larger.
Yeah, I was thinking it was rear projection.
Yeah, it was probably just rear projection, but they just blew it up.
Yeah, because like you could look at them in the background and tell. You could see like film grain.
Yeah, you can tell they're not there. They clearly just filmed them. But he's not fucking with those. He turns and he reaches down and grabs like a clipboard. And it says, it's like a first injection, third injection, sixth injection, and it's got dates. But it also says how many days the animal has been alive. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it took 12 days for that rat to go from baby rat to like 2 microwaves.
Big boy rat.
The guinea pig took 13 days because he's injecting them with whatever it is that he's getting from this box.
It's like 1 injection every 3 days.
And now we get to something that makes me beyond upset. And I wrote many notes, and I want you to guess what it is.
Is it the Rancho?
What about it? Not the big one that we end up seeing a second later, but the first one we see.
What was that?
Okay, so I don't know if y'all know this. I'm obsessed with things like snakes, reptiles, tarantulas, tarantula husbandry, meaning what you put them in. And he literally picks up a glass box that has some sand in one side. That's it. It's piled all to one side. No water dish. There's chicken wire wrapped around the top. Like, what the fuck? There's no hide. There's some sand. There's no lights. There's nothing. It's just a tarantula in a glass box with a bunch of chicken wire. That's it. It made me real upset. And I had to remember it was the 50s where turtles were a really popular pet. And they would say, like, well, if your turtle doesn't eat, just shove its food down its throat with a pencil eraser. Jesus. That's true. That's from a book from the 50s. I read it.
The 50s were dumb.
Oh, the people in the 50s were super stupid. Like, we are now, too. I'm not fucking smart. I know that.
So we have that smaller tarantula, and then we see the big Rancho.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool reveal because it goes from him looking at, like, here's this little tarantula that's been alive for I don't remember how many days, and then it, like, pans over a little bit to this tarantula that's the size of, like, a dog.
It is fucking big. This tarantula is 22 days old.
Yeah.
It's had 6 injections, and I just have, he's a big boy!
Okay, so it's probably a girl tarantula, I'm assuming, because when it comes to science, you use female tarantulas because female tarantulas live a lot longer. Later, they do a whole thing about tarantulas can live over 20 years. Female tarantulas can live over 20 years. Male tarantulas live about 3 to 7, depending on the tarantula. I'm sorry, it's not a boy. I'm sure it's a girl. I had to put that out.
Or a boy with an eye.
It doesn't matter. I have to put it out here. I'm serious about my tarantulas. Anyway.
Anyway, the professor grabs a monkey.
Yeah, he grabs a monkey. He's gonna inject this baby monkey. But then this fucking ass monster man ass walks in. I don't know. He comes wandering in and you're just like, what?
He comes around the corner all sneaky. Like, you see the fingers around the corner and he peeks his head around.
Almost kind of looks like Discount Frankenstein without the bolts. Like, that's the only way I can kind of describe
him. I think I described him as a mutant because I didn't know what he was.
But it's like really deformed. And
some good makeup though.
Yeah, and actually the makeup artist did a really good job, even with that weird Wolfman look. But he like chokes the professor, and I didn't see what he grabbed, but he threw something towards the tarantula enclosure. And then like the tarantula, when I say it climbs out, it is the most leisurely, like, on my way out the door. Because I'm assuming that this is a New World fucking Mexican red knee tarantula. Those do not go fast. They just crawl at a leisurely pace. They go on their own time. Unlike old world tarantulas, which would have been a great use because those things will sprint at you nonstop. I just had to put that in there.
Yeah. The professor and the mutant.
I think it's later revealed to be Paul.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway.
The professor and the guy attacking him. You know, they're fighting. The Rancho gets out.
Mm-hmm.
The deformed guy throws something into some panels which starts sparks. Kills basically all the other animals in the lab, all the ones that had been injected.
Yeah.
And he knocks out the professor. While the professor's asleep, he injects him with the same syringe we saw earlier.
I didn't see that because I was typing something. So I didn't realize that he'd been injected. So I was wondering really hardcore while he was just rubbing his arm. I was like, why is this man just like, is he have a nervous tick or something? It's because I didn't see that part because I was typing. So yeah, his poor lab is now destroyed.
So the guy, after ejecting the professor, he stumbles away for a little bit and then just drops dead, just like the dude in the beginning.
Yeah, so the professor like picks up the phone like he's gonna call somebody. I'm assuming the sheriff to like report a dead body, but either the line is dead or he's like, oh my god, I can't report.
I thought he was going for like he was second guessing himself. He's like going to I gotta call the police or the fire department or something.
Yeah.
Like, wait, no.
Yeah, because that's a bad idea. Like, my lab's on fire and there's a dead body. Like, that's going to cause a lot of investigation. So, instead, he buries him in the desert in a scene that takes way too long because he's out there, like, gotta cover up the hole. Then he has to take a stick to, like, even out the sand.
Yeah.
And it just takes way too long because, again, these movies have the syndrome of showing us for way too long when you're doing something.
But they didn't show any of the digging or the burial. It's just like when he's putting on that last little bit of dirt.
Mm-hmm. And then for some reason, a monkey just jumps out at him. And it just comes screaming from the shadows.
Yeah, they had a whole like scary sequence, like, oh, big long shadow. And it's like, oh, it's the monkey. I just thought it was the monkey from earlier. That monkey never comes back.
Nope.
I just realized that.
Nope, the monkey
never shows up again.
No, he's just like, oh my god, poor little monkey. And I think it was just supposed to be like a jump scare for no reason that I don't know why they put it in.
Jump scare.
Yeah, it was just like a strange jump scare. Okay. So we cut back to the town, and Hastings is back at the sheriff's office, like, it's not acromegalia.
You've got that look like you swallowed a canary.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing that people would say. That's actually, like, a thing.
I just hadn't heard that before.
Swallowing a canary was a saying. I don't really know exactly what... I just know it used to be a saying. So, Hastings goes back to the sheriff's office. He says the thing about the acromegalia. You swallowed a canary, which is some sort of saying. I don't know. Okay. So, Hastings says that he went to Phoenix and back 200 miles. 200 miles. So, 400 miles both ways overnight to study the disease. I'm wondering if maybe... It sounds like he did it the night before, but I wonder if that's where he was, like, before he came back. But the way that he says it, it makes it sound like he took the trip overnight.
Yeah.
But I think maybe he just happened to be in Phoenix and was just coming back from that particular trip. And it just happens to be that he was studying acromegalia because it's a really rare disease. And he's like, the professor is lying. He didn't want me to do that autopsy, which we've already mentioned.
Yeah, he's up to something.
Yeah. He's like, what are the professor and Jacobs up to? They were posted up 20 miles outside of town, like, doing these studies. Hastings wonders what the professor and Jacobs were up to because they were, like, 20 miles outside of town, as you were about to say.
Yeah. When two minds like that work together 20 miles away from civilization, they're up to something.
I mean, yeah, they do seem like they were up to something because the professor's being, like, super suspicious. It seems like they must be trying to hide something. So then a journalist by the name of Joe shows up. And he's like, what the fuck, Sheriff? You didn't tell me about that dead body y'all found out in the desert. Why didn't you tell me about Jacobs? And he's just like, well, I didn't want to make a big fuss about it. I mean, he doesn't want the town to have to worry about something yet, that they don't know what's going on. And they talk a little bit more about the disease. And it turns out you don't die from the disease itself. You die of suffocation because, like, your tongue gets bigger, your heart gets bigger, your organs all expand.
It enlarges and shifts your organs around and basically blocks your windpipe till you die.
That's fucking horrifying when you think about it. Like, that sounds awful. No, thank you.
It's a really disturbing aspect of the movie that I kind of wish they would have went a little more into. That's creepy.
It is really creepy, but it's also kind of like a red herring. Like, you're supposed to think it's this, but in reality, it's something else that's going on. But this also just happens to be a thing that exists in this world. So Dr. Hastings is like, all right, I'm going to go to the lab. Joe, you can come with me. Let's go investigate, see what's up. But first, he wants to go back to his office where a lady shows up. And I literally wrote, all right, here we go. A lady shows up. Time for sexism.
I wrote a little bit before this that we have yet to even see a woman in this movie.
We hadn't. We're about a little under 20 minutes in. Because let me tell you, we're going to get to some sexism later that made me scream. It's coming up. So I put that she went to a hotel. It was his office. And I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
Well, I thought it was that... I had to hear it earlier.
It had to have been his office because it's Josh, the reception clerk, that greets her. But she got off of like a bus or out of a cab, and she's got bags.
I think what it is that the place they're at is the Palace Hotel. I saw that in the beginning.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
And I think that Hastings just stays there while he's in town.
So when he's in town, that's like his office when he's in town.
Yeah.
So that's like the concierge. So that's why she would have gone into the hotel
to
ask for a taxi or a bus to get there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense. I was really confused as to why she would show up at his office and talk to his clerk like, "Hi, can you give me a bus?" Like, oh, I didn't catch that it was the hotel. I didn't read the fucking hotel door. Okay.
It was like way up in the top left corner. I do not blame you for missing it.
Okay, thank you. That explains so much. So she wants to go to the professor's lab as well, and she talks to Josh, who is giving her eyes the whole time and talking really like, "Well, lady, I don't know." She wants to go to the lab. She has to wait for the tab to come back. The tab? The bus doesn't leave again. Like, it doesn't go out that way.
Yeah.
And the cab that they have in town, there's only one, and he's like hours out of town because he had to take somebody somewhere.
So he'll be back in a few hours, maybe longer.
Yeah, which I guess if you're a town of maybe 200 to 300 people, maybe, I don't know, they don't really say, but it's clearly teeny tiny.
We only ever see like Main Street, and that's it.
It really felt like that was the only street.
It felt like
in
a
the
one
town.
street kind of town.
Mm-hmm, maybe two at the most.
Yeah.
So clearly, it would make sense that anything that resembled a cab might have taken somebody really, really far away, and you would have to wait hours for it. I've had to wait an hour for an Uber before. All right, like it makes sense to me. So she takes her bags. She sits down. He keeps giving her like this creepy look.
Asking all these questions.
He's like, "Are you related? He kin?" And she's like, "No." And at this point I put, "Is she a doctor?" Because in all these movies, these women always be obscure ass doctors of some kind. So, Hastings comes in and he runs into her as she's like sitting there. And I put the hotel guy because I forgot that he was the clerk. Was like
John Hotelman.
Yeah, Josh Hotelman. Thank you.
No, he's now John Hotelman.
Okay. Anyway, he's like, "Oh, hey." He goes, "I have to." Hastings tells him like, "I'm going back to the lab." The Hotelman is like, "Oh, take her with you. She is also heading out that way." And she's like, "Oh no, I don't want to impose." She's trying to be polite, and this was a point where I was like, "Is this sexism?" I almost made you pause to take the time, but I decided not to.
You did make me pause.
Oh, I did make you pause. I was also typing something, but I decided not to let this count. He says, "Oh, he won't mind," implying that she's pretty. Like, she's a pretty lady.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, she's not terrible. She's, and
he's just super nice. He'll do it.
Yeah, but that's not how he said it.
Yeah, I know.
The way he said it was like, he won't mind.
I'm trying to give him an out.
I know. And again, I'm like, is he a doctor? They're always obscure doctors. So her name is Stephanie. She goes by Steve. I refuse to call her Steve because, as I wrote later, they had to call her Steve because Steve is a man's name and she's a doctor. Like, that's how I really felt about it. So I continued to call her Stephanie because I refused to call her Steve.
I felt like her name was supposed to be Steph, but whoever read the script or wrote it was like, the name Stephanie shortened into Steph, and there's like Stephen with a PH, so it must be Steve.
Maybe that's the only thing I could think of otherwise, but to me it felt very like, oh no, she's a doctor, so we have to call her by a man's name, which maybe is your description, but I called her Stephanie because Steve felt weird. It turns out she's a graduate student. She's a graduate in biology, and she, oh my God, fuck, okay. We're to the part that's gonna kill me, okay? Because, oh man, there's in 30 seconds, not even, there are two lines that are horrifically sexist. Okay, ding, ding, ding. We're here.
So sexism alarm.
Sexism alarm.
Sexism alarm now.
23 minutes and 12 seconds into this film. So she says she's a doctor in biology. He says, and I fucking quote, I knew it. You give women the right to vote. The next thing you know, you have women scientists.
What a chode.
I was so angry that I made you pause it, because I always do, because I want to write down the sexism. Like, I need to know what time the sexism happened. But I was so upset by this one. Because she says she took a job, right after this, she's like, oh, I took a job working for Jacobs because she wrote a paper about feeding large populations in college. And she's like, oh, I took a job there to study and be a lab assistant. And cook.
Oh, I missed the cook part.
Mm-hmm. That's the other sexist line that is said in that part. And I literally wrote, to cook and fuck off. I was so mad. So he says this really sexist line about women doctors, and then she's like, well, I'm there to study and cook. And I'm like, fuck off! Like, come on. So then she starts talking about Jacobs, and she's like, oh, well, he's dead. And she's like, what? But acromegalia, whatever the hell it is really rare. And he's like, I know. And they continue to drive.
They continue to have to drive and have a perfectly crystal clear conversation in this convertible driving down the highway.
Also, the tarantula just kind of walks behind them. And I'm like, how did they not see it? It's now about the size of that car. Yep. Like, it has grown. And you're like...
The giant rancho walks by the road, even bigger than before, mere seconds after they drive by. How did they not see that as they drove by? It's the desert. It ain't much blocking the view.
I mean, there are some hills later, but you are right. There's not much to block that view. So they knock on the door. They get to the lab. They're like, no. But nobody answers it. So they do a fucking B&E and go in.
Bacon and eggs.
I mean, they go in uninvited. So they do a B&E. And they're like, oh my God. What happened here? And they're like, did Jacobs do this? What happened to Jacobs? They just keep going back about Jacobs. Yeah. And he's like, no. Also, they were supposed to take Joe, the photographer, journalist man, with them. He was not in that car. I don't know how he got there.
I think he just drove ahead.
I just like the fact that he's like, yeah, come with me. And then he's not with him.
Okay, I'll drive ahead.
I don't know.
If he was there interviewing him, he's like, that's enough questions. Take a picture with the monkey. That's enough.
I know. I just love that. That's all. So... okay, time for sexism again. Making me mad. I like that whenever I get to the sexist parts, you let me talk about it, because you're like, I'm not a woman.
I got something else to talk about here, but that's fine.
Okay.
It's far less important.
So, the professor asks Stephanie for her name. Who is she? He's not sure. He didn't realize that Jacobs had even, hired an assistant. Mm-hmm. Or if he did, he didn't know that she was a lady. Hastings cuts her off when she's like, my name is, he's like, oh, this is Stephanie Clayton. She's your new lab assistant. And I was so goddamn mad, because then after that, the professor says, I never expected to see a biologist like you. Yeah. And I wanted to push that man down those stairs. I get so upset. Anyway, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, Stephanie talks about the other assistant named Paul.
Yeah.
Now, what did you hear his last name as?
I didn't even catch it.
Because I'm not sure if it was Landon or London.
You're right. She did say it. I think it was Landon, but I'm not sure.
Because I want it to be Paul London, which means that the professor was working with a former world tag team champion.
That is true.
Paul London and Brian Kendrick.
That is true.
I don't know why that just got me. The wrestling thing will come back later, don't worry.
Oh, yeah, it will.
This is where we learn about Paul.
The professor's like, Paul? Oh, he left. Because she mentions how she studied with him in school, first year of school or something like that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And he's like, he's gone. He just left. But she definitely expected him to be there. She's like, okay. So then, the professor's like, okay, fine. I guess I'll tell you what we've been up to. And this is where I've been
carving wooden ducks.
All right, Magnus. this is where I have a lot of questions.
This is where the pseudoscience really comes in.
It is where the pseudoscience comes in because I'm willing to accept this fake acromegalia disease. You don't even have to say much, but I'm just like, yeah, I can suspend my disbelief that this would exist. Because you don't go too much into it. You're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can suspend your disbelief. But here I have some questions because what? Why would you think this was a good idea? So the professor talks about his non-organic food concentrate that he's trying to help create to sustain the population of the world because the world won't be able to produce enough food to feed everybody because of the rapidly growing population. He wants to make it cheap, but the problem is it's causing accelerated growth. He doesn't mention that yet.
Mm-hmm.
And Hastings goes, well, gee, Professor, wouldn't you need some kind of binding agent for that? And he's like, yeah, I got that down. Radioactive isotopes.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So this is where I have a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
If this is supposed to be your nutrient source and you're injecting it into animals, he won't touch it with his own hands. If he won't touch the radioactive isotope food concentrate with his own hands because it's very dangerous, why would he then inject it into an animal?
I think the thing is that he's still testing it. So he's okay testing on an animal, but not a human.
You're right. But it's like, he won't even touch it. So why does he think that this radioactive isotope that's clearly very dangerous and he won't touch it himself because we know what radioactivity does to the body at this point? Why would you think, radioactivity is going to be the perfect thing to make my food out of?
Yeah.
Like, I ended up actually wrote about that later, but I was like, I'll bring it up now because it bothered me. I was like, so
it's like, if we get this food isotope, give it to people, we won't need to have as much food, not as much resources on food, because the population going to just keep on growing.
And this is something that we have seen in these movies before. They talk about radioactivity and food shortages, like, a lot in these movies. Because that came up in The Claw, which we haven't done at, the bird.
The Giant Claw.
The Giant Claw.
Yeah.
The Giant Claw was also about population management. Like, a lot of these films, I've watched many of them, a lot of them are about worrying about food and radioactivity and resources in the future, which now that we're in 2021, I scream. Like, oh no.
But we've also learned that if you just kill half the population, it works. Thanks, Thanos.
Yeah, but he talks about how large the population is going to grow. And we're going to unlock a fun fact a little early. Let me go down to it because he predicted... So the doctor predicts that by the year 2000, the human population will be 3.6 billion people. At the time, it was actually double that.
Yep.
So I just thought, hey, I should bring this up now. It was double that.
He said then, in 1955...
Mm-hmm.
It was 2 billion people.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about that. Like 70 years ago, like the population of Earth is tripled, almost quadrupled.
By the year 2000.
Which is fucking crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. So Dr. Hastings is still like, yeah, but Jacob's though. And you're like, oh my fucking God. Okay.
He also guesses what the radioactive isotope is in the jar. It's an unlabeled jar. He's like, that's an isotope.
Yeah, he does, but I kind of let that go.
Like, it looks like Kool-Aid to me.
I let it go. I was like, maybe in this world he could look at it and be like, oh, it's green. I don't know. Fucking whatever. And he's like, there's nothing wrong with Jacobs. Fine. Do the autopsy. But the problem is they've already buried the body. They're not going to have to exhume the body from the earth to do the autopsy. That's going to take some time because government.
Yep.
Also, Stephanie never says anything this entire time. This is literally what she's an expert in, is feeding growing populations.
Like, she talks like, where's Paul? And then, like, once they go into the lab, nothing.
And that's literally, like, her expertise. Like, that's what she wrote her paper about. And it just really bothered me that they weren't, like, Stephanie didn't have any input, considering she's a doctor that studies population growth and feeding overpopulations.
Yeah.
It bothered me. I made you pause so I could tell you that because I was upset. I think the sexism mostly ends there. I think there's a little bit later, but I think that's like the big brunt of it. So, okay. Hastings goes back to the sheriff. There's a lot of back to the sheriff, now back to the lab, now back to the sheriff, back and forth. So he goes back to the sheriff and he's like, ain't nothing going down there, dog. It's kosher.
He got sick.
Mm-hmm. And we cut back to the lab where the doctor, or the professor, not the doctor, is showing her how to make his nutrients and his isotope mixture. Mm-hmm. And this is where we get a little bit more information, which is where I was like, what the fuck, he won't touch it. Which is where he's talking about how it's unstable. And every time he makes the isotope mixture, it's different. Every single time. It's unstable every time. It's different every time. That's why he's injecting it into animals. Because if he's going to inject it to people, it has to be right this time.
Yeah.
They do a lot of where people will say things like that where they're implying something. There's a lot of it. There's a really good one later that we'll talk about that talks about implication that I'm like, what? I really liked it. So yeah, it's unstable every time. And he's like, we're going to inject it into this baby rat. Sometimes they just die though, because instability. Yep. And she's just like, okay. Like she doesn't care. She's like, let's go. So he's like, let's look at this rabbit because we're going to talk about the instability still. Like, yep. How old does it look? 4 months old. How old is it though?
6 days. Wow. Healthier and stronger than the others. Mm-hmm. Than the other ones.
Yeah. So they have to figure out how they can make the isotope stable so that way they can start testing it on people this time.
And as soon as he said that, he starts rubbing his arm.
Yeah, he's just rubbing his arm because he's like, oh, shit. Like, he knows what's coming. He's really trying to figure it out in what little time he has left. We can assume about 4 days. So then Stephanie goes to town. She's like, okay, I'm going to go to town. So she fucks off.
Science is science, but a girl must get her hair done.
Oh, I missed that.
Yep.
Oh, I thought we were done. I missed that line. I'm so glad you caught that.
There's also the guy, Mart's Hartswear.
That's my next one.
It's Mart's Hardware, but I like Mart's Hartswear.
You're right. I forgot. We have another instance of sexism. So, yep. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. I did not catch the science of science, but a girl must get her hair done line. Like, okay, fine. I
also like to think that they gave her a short haircut so they don't have to worry about her hair blowing around in all those car conversations.
Well, no, she wore a hat. She had long hair, but it was pulled back and under like a little cap. Like, not really quite a full hat. It was more like a little half, like...
Well, it's like even when she had the hat off, she had short hair.
No, she had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. We see that later when she's in her pajamas studying, that her hair is all pulled back in like a ribbon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has a long ponytail. She has long hair. It just is like always tied back and swept back out of her face. And you can also see when she has her hat on that her ponytail is behind her head, under her hat. So, Dr. Hastings is like talking to this guy outside of his hardware store about his wife's medication, not to the wife who he's prescribing it to, but to her husband because that's how medical care worked back then. Fuck off. And he's like, make sure she takes it every day or whatever he says. And he says something like, women nary to just let it sit on the shelf, meaning she won't do as she's told. We're at 35 minutes in. I made you pause it so I can look at that because it made me mad. Every time sexism makes me mad, I make you pause it so I can take the timestamp.
Sexism on.
Yep. I love it though. Like, I hate it. It makes me upset, but like at the same time, I laugh because what the hell? I can't, like, how far have we come, y'all? And I know I'm a fucking white woman, so I have more privilege, but still, God. Okay. This is when I talked about Stephanie being called Steve and me being upset about it. So,
because she walks by and Hastings is like, Steve.
Yeah, and that's when
Steve here.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, God damn it, they call her Steve and never Stephanie, and fucking fuck off. And so they go and they walk to a bench and they sit down together.
They walk to a park where stock children sound effects are playing.
I even wrote, I bet something sexist is going to happen here. It does not, but I wrote it because I was like, they're either about to kiss or something shitty's about to happen, and I don't know which it is. Park. Yeah, neither. Wow. Surprising.
I want to see Wang in this movie.
I do not want to see Wang. I do not want to see sexist Hastings Wang. No way. Get out of here.
Dr. Wang.
No. So Dr. Hastings is like, oh, what about Paul and the nutrient? And she's like, whatever. Don't worry about that. I'm going to tell you about the rabbit. Go on. Yeah, go on. I'm letting you go
talk about Wangs? Okay.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, they basically tells him about the rabbit. Basically the exact same thing that Professor Geemer said of like, it's like, it's like 4 months. It looks like it's 4 months old, but it's 6 days. I'm like, let's go take a look. So they drive out to Geemer's on the way.
I have one note before that. She tells him that the nutrient can cause death, but the animals are strong and healthy. Which is it? Is it killing them, or is it making them strong and healthy? I'm sorry, I had to put that in there.
I think it's that if they live, they become strong and healthy.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's also accelerating their growth and killing them. Sorry. Go on. Now we're driving through the desert.
So they're driving through the desert, and Stephanie's like, oh, it's so beautiful out here in this desert. I love sand. It's coarse and rough and gets everywhere. And she sees some big old rocks. I'm like, let's go hang out with these rocks. Let's take a look at the formation. And this romantic music starts playing. We're both having the same thought. Like, oh, they're going to kiss. They're going to fork on the rock.
I literally wrote, they drive through the desert. They talk about how pretty it is. They pull over at the rock formation. I put, they better not kiss. This music is too romantic. If they kiss, I'm leaving. Because he's been shitting to her this whole time.
And they see a bunny and they're just hanging out. And they sit on the rocks and have a cigarette, and then we get some ominous music.
Oh wait, there's a little bit before that I wrote down because I thought the line was weird. So we get they sit down to smoke, and some rocks start falling, and the ominous music starts. And he's like, "Do you want to come in my plane?" This is where I realized it was his plane. He was flying the plane. Okay. He says it's his plane.
So they're gonna join the Mile High Club when she comes in his plane.
Yeah. He offers to take Stephanie in his plane.
They're flirting. Reaction to that.
they're clearly flirting. He calls flying strangely evil. He's like, flying is beautiful and strangely evil because you never know what the earth is hiding. And you're like, oh, what?
That a rock slide happens.
I've been in a plane many times. I've flown over the ocean. It's never been described as strangely evil. But yes, so then...
I don't know, I've eaten some airline food that's strangely evil.
Yeah. So yeah, then more rocks fall, they don't crush stupid sexist Dr. Hastings, is what I wrote.
One thing that you can see is at one point, if you look in the shadow, like when they get up and run to the side, you can see a guy's arm pushing a rock in the shadows.
Oh man, I missed that. I'm really sad. Yeah, it didn't crush stupid sexist Dr. Hastings, as I put. They have no idea there was a rock slide. The man's arm that I totally missed. Very sad. It ruined his sweet moves he was putting on her, though, and I'm very happy about that. So they leave.
Got cock blocked by a giant tarantula.
Yeah,
that happens to all of us.
It would definitely happen to you. I'm just saying, if we were about to fucking go bone zone, and then there was a giant tarantula, I would want to go look at the giant tarantula.
I would run in terror.
I mean... I'm not saying maybe necessarily like giant in the sense of this giant tarantula, but I just mean like a tarantula in general.
Because tarantula, it just keeps getting better. Boy, he thick.
Boy, he very thick. She thick. So I'm assuming it's a lady. So this tarantula climbs very slowly over these rocks, but again, they don't see it. They don't hear it. It's making this weird noise anytime you see it. I don't know why it's making this weird noise. Probably so that way the movie won't seem so quiet.
Yeah, so they can give it something, because not until later does it actually have footstep sound effects either.
It also roars, which is wild.
Also, for some reason, I have written down here, Mancho, Rancho, Randy, Sancho.
Okay, because it comes over the rock?
I don't know. I think it's because I wrote Mancho at one point instead of Rancho.
Okay. So they don't see it. She's like...
How do you even write Mancho?
I don't know.
The R's nowhere near that.
I don't know. But she's like, oh my god, what caused that rock slide? And he's like, I don't know. That sometimes they just happen. That is true. Sometimes rock slides just be happening.
You can't second guess the desert, is what he says, which I'm assuming is the moral of the story.
Yeah, that's clearly the moral of this story, not overpopulation and resource management. So they go to the lab. They want to look at the rabbits. The professor is peeking through the window for some reason, right when they pull up.
And they pull up, and Stephanie's like, "Do you want to see the rabbits?" And Hastings responds, now you're talking. Like, this dude is fucking pumped to see these bunnies. And to be fair, I probably would be too.
I would be very pumped to see these bunnies, but it's also the fact that, like, he's a doctor. This is his into this lab that he wants to know what the fuck is going on inside of.
Like, now you're talking.
But he's like, I've never seen a man so amped to see some bunny rabbits. Like, he is way too excited. And the professor's, like, peeking out this window and, like, runs away from the window like a toddler that's doing something it shouldn't.
Well, he is super sexist. Maybe he thought they were Playboy bunnies.
Oh, maybe.
That's why he's excited.
Maybe.
He gets in there just like, oh. He's just all sad.
But yeah, the professor's like trying to look like he wasn't doing anything weird, but he but he was definitely creeping on that window.
Sad boner.
So Stephanie takes Hastings to the lab. And this bunny that was like normal sized earlier is now so big that it can't fit in the cage. And it can't breathe. It's like choking itself because it's so big that the cage is like compressing down on it, and it made me very sad. And I wanted to open that. I can tell it's clearly a fake rabbit. It made me very sad. The baby rat has doubled in size.
That's the one they injected this morning.
And she's like, it was a baby this morning. I swear to God. Like, she's freaking out. Which, I mean, to be fair, that's exactly how I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, I would definitely be freaking out. I'd be screaming just the way she is. So she's like screaming in terror, but then answers the phone. And it's Hastings' office because they clearly knew where he was.
Yeah.
They call him all the time. Like, people just call him and they're like, Hastings, we need you. And he's like, they're just like, they know exactly where he is.
You gotta go stop by Jenkins' house. His son got his foot caught in a wheat thresher. Go fix him.
I mean, that's not at all what happens in the movie. But that's how it seems. Like, they always know where he is. So,
this dude is like necessary for everything in this town. I swear to God, he just shows up places and people are fine with it.
The thing is, he literally shows up. He's there for 2 minutes. They call him. He has to leave. Yep. This happens every time he gets anywhere. It would be like if I got home and I got a phone call from my mom that was like, Caitlin, I need you to drive across town. Okay, I drive 20 minutes across town. I walk through her door. I say, hi, what do you need? I talk to her for 2 minutes. Then you call me and go, Caitlin, you need to come home right now. So then I get in the car, drive 20 minutes back here. Then I get another phone call from work. It's like, Caitlin, we need you to come to work. You know, like, it would be like as if I walked through the door and then I immediately had to leave again within 30 seconds of being somewhere. That is what's happening to this poor doctor. So they talk about how whatever they're injecting into these creatures is causing gigantism. Stephanie gets confronted by the professor because Hastings has left. And he's like, why the hell did you show Hastings the lab and the bunnies?
It was confidential.
Yeah, he's like, what the hell have you done?
He's so creepy. Like the first shot we see him looming over the stairs all in shadow.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a good shot.
Yeah, it's super dramatic.
And he's like, it's confidential. And she's like, I didn't think it was. And he's like, well, whenever you're doing secret science, it is confidentially, moron. Yeah. Like, that's how he's acting. And this is where she's like, Doctor, your face.
Doctor, your face. You're so old.
The thing is, his face doesn't look any different to me here. It must have looked different to her for some reason, but to me, it looked the same.
Yeah.
But whatever. This is where I forgot that he got injected because he like reaches up and touches his face. It didn't look different to me, but maybe it did, and I just didn't notice.
Yeah. And I think this is the point where Deemer is aware, like fully aware he was injected.
Yeah. Well,
I think maybe he suspected earlier.
He kind of suspected it earlier, but now I think this is where he's getting the idea of maybe he has been, because he's like, my face. Like, he looks a little confused. He also rubbed his arm at some point because he was like, ow, my arm kind of hurts.
He got a second Pfizer dose.
Yeah, like when you get an injection and your arm hurts. Yeah, he got fucking Moderna. More desert driving. We see so much driving through this freaking desert. I wish I would have counted it, because by the end I was like, how many times can we determinedly drive down this road? Because a lot of the time also it's just the same shot reversed to show like, now we're driving to the lab, now we're driving to town, now we're driving somewhere. They just reverse the shot, which again, it's the 50s, whatever. So he, what do I have?
He's right there.
Yeah, I have a really weird note. I'm just gonna delete it because I don't know what the fuck.
All right, so
it's the sheriff, but I typed it wrong. Mm-hmm. Go on.
So on his way back down, Hastings stops by the rocks to investigate the rock slide. Like, see what's up with that. And then from out of nowhere behind him, it's the sheriff. He just appears.
Well, he explains why he just appears. The sheriff happened to be driving by and he saw his car pulled over. So he stopped to, like, talk to him because maybe he was checking on him. Like, why would you just be out in the middle of the desert on a rock formation? Yeah, they're clearly friends because he's like, hey, I happen to be driving by. Something happened to the local farmer's cattle. Do you want to come with me? And he's like, well, you don't need my advice. He's like, no, I just want you to come with me.
Just for company. You can come along to an active crime scene.
Yeah, they don't know it's an active crime scene, but yeah, that is weird. Like, yeah, come to this active crime scene with me, doctor.
They arrive at the farm, and the farmer, Andy, totally cool with the doctor just being there. Like, I called the cops, but you showed up. That's cool. And also, he knows who Hastings is.
Again, this is clearly this town's doctor. Yeah. Everybody probably sees Hastings. But yeah, he literally just invites him because they're friends. So the rancher walks over, and he shows off some stripped skeletons. And they're like, it's not a mountain lion or a wolf. Now, this is where we have to talk about how ranchers eat.
Cow skeletons.
Cow skeletons, yeah. So, tarantulas, some people think they always spin webs to get their food. They often don't. They actually charge down their food. And they inject them with venom, and then they, like, suck out the insides. So the skin would also still be there. Because when you go to clean out, like, your tarantula's, like...
enclosure?
Yes. You would pull out, like, the skeleton of, like, the cricket, but it would also have, like, the exoskeleton there. So they would still have the skin. I just thought it was funny. But yeah, there's bones, but there's literally nothing else left.
There's no blood. There's nothing around, just perfectly picked bones.
Which would, again, okay, fine.
That's what we got at Party City.
Yep. Sucked bones.
I know what we're doing later.
So no. Oh. So they leave. They don't know what's up. They even say, like, I don't know, but they just leave. They don't investigate more.
Oh, before that, they look 2 feet to the right and see the puddle of something.
I did miss that they saw that puddle the first time. There's like a big puddle of, like, white
jizz.
God damn it! I'm just trying not to say it. It's a big puddle of goo. It's white. Shut up. We're not calling it that. Get out of my house.
Spunkums.
No. Okay.
Baby batter.
Sure. Fuck off. Okay. So they're like, the sheriff's like, round up your cattle. We don't know what the hell's going on. We're leaving.
The farmer also says, don't worry about that puddle. Just tell me what's wrong with my cattle. You don't think that the mysterious puddle might have something to do with the bones 2 feet away from him.
Nope. So... So he rounds up his horses, but not, like, in a barn. They're just outside in a fucking paddock, like, just exposed to the elements. And I'm like, hey, idiot farmer, if you know something's eating cattle or whatever, why would you leave the horses outside?
So yeah, we cut to night time.
Yeah, we do cut, and the tarantula climbs over a hill. And this is where I noticed that it was making that weird static noise that I hadn't noticed before.
The horses freak out.
The horses are freaking out.
And the tarantula's fucking big at this point. It's like the size of a house.
Yeah, it's like house-sized or bigger at this point.
And this is where we actually start getting some of the, some subtle foot sound, like foot stomping sound effects.
See, I didn't hear them. I only heard the weird static noise.
They were really quiet throughout, like, the whole movie.
Okay, maybe I just missed them, because tarantulas are silent walkers. Anyway, so it climbs...
If it's not that big, it would still make some noise.
It would. So it climbs down the hill, and then it roars as it's going for these horses, but then the rancher comes out and he shoots at it, so the tarantula, like, turns and eats him. And yeah, it makes, like, this, like... noise.
It makes, like, a legit roar sound.
Yeah, and it's really strange. And it eats the rancher.
Just like the tornado in Twister.
Oh, it is like the tornado in Twister.
We can't watch Twister for this show.
Why not? Was it too high budget?
Too high budget.
No.
Yeah, maybe in the future.
Guys, let us know if you want us to watch Twister, because I love Twister. It's a childhood favorite. And if Gus doesn't let me watch Twister, I'm gonna cry.
Didn't Van Halen do the song for that movie?
Maybe. I don't remember. We've watched it before. I want to watch the movie that the conductor thought he was writing for. That's all I'm saying.
The music does not fit with the movie at all, and I fucking love it. It's so weird. Okay, back to Rangers.
Okay, so some dudes in a truck. They're literally just some dudes. You've never seen them before.
Dudes in the truck, and I think there's a goat.
It's full of sheep, I believe. Are driving on the road, but oh no, the rancho's here, and it roars. And now here's where I kid you not, this is the most baffling thing in this entire movie to me. Everything else, fine, I could take. But it throws the truck. It doesn't knock the truck over with its leg and tumble it down. The truck never flips. It just picks the truck up, throws the truck 30 feet.
There was some pretty shitty editing here.
Yeah. Like, just throws it down the mountain.
Speaking of shitty editing, I'm going to go back a bit. Go back quite a ways. Just back to the monkey scene.
Uh-huh.
When the monkey at night, when he's, the Professor buries the guy.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 random cuts for the monkey to get into his arms. I forgot to mention that. But it's just like, and then the monkey.
Anyway, I guess there were. Anyway. So yeah, it was so baffling that, like, this truck, he, like, yeets the truck off the mountain. It doesn't, it just, like, lands on its tires and then explodes, and then the rancho eats everyone. Yeah. So, next morning, the sheriff and Hastings are like, sup, police bros? And they're like, look at this shit. More skeletons. Like, literally, that's it. Like,
at first I was like, why the... Before they showed the skeletons, I was like, why is the Hastings here? He said everything. Like, the cops were like, hi, Hastings, how you doing? But then one of them was like, well, Jack said you've seen stuff like this before, so at least explain it.
Yeah, they do explain, like, hey, you've seen this before.
So he doesn't just show up everywhere.
Right, because he was there yesterday. Yeah. Also, there are now human dead bodies. We don't really know that. Like, they don't necessarily know that, but, like, now there's human dead bodies as well as these dead sheep.
Well, also, the police have confirmed that Andy, the rancher, is dead. His wife found his bones.
Right. So they're like, okay, we need to get the doctor in on this. Maybe he can give us some insight. So now there's just, like, a ton of the weird white goo, and he, like, reaches down to touch it, which, with his bare-ass hand, he's like, oh, let me touch the goo. And I'm like, don't touch the goo. You don't know what that is. And he's like, doesn't smell like anything particular. And so he collects it in a thermos, because that's what they had, which makes sense. Yeah. And it's the 3rd time they found the white goo. The first time was the first time that they looked at the cattle that were dead. The second time was Andy the rancher, and now... Well,
Andy the ranchy.
And now. And the journalist is like, I gotta go public with this. And the sheriff's like, don't you fucking dare.
No, keep it vague. No, keep it not so vague. Just say it was an accident, because if it's vague, it'll scare the town.
Well, it's more that if you just tell people, like, yeah, all these skeletons are showing up and there's white goo, like, that's scary. Yeah. That would scare the shit out of me if you were like...
Instead, just say, oh, these guys crashed their car and died.
Right, because
that happens.
That happens. So they take... It looks like slime when he puts it in the thermos.
It does.
It's like, ew. And he's like... He takes it back to, I guess, his office to look under a microscope that he, for some reason, has. And he's like, looks like insect venom. Yes.
It's insect venom with traces of chicken noodle soup.
Because, you know, all insect venom is the same. All of it. It's all the same.
Yep.
A little bit different, but you can look at it and be like, that's insect venom. Don't know what kind, though. Like, what? That also bothered me for no particular reason. So, they're like, what if we take it to the professor? And so Stephanie answers the phone, and fucking professor comes down looking all weird and sick.
Like, he comes down the stairs and grabs the phone out of her hand off screen, and she just screams.
Yeah, so she screams, he takes the phone, we drive again across the desert.
Driving through the desert, looking determined.
Mm-hmm.
Then we see the rancho in the back, and it's the size of a hill now.
Yeah.
Hastings still doesn't see it.
How he did... Okay.
He's determined.
I get that it's behind him now. But you check your rearview mirror when you're driving straight, right?
Not if I'm determined to have to go save a woman named Steve. Stephanie.
So
that's what I put in my iced tea instead of sugar.
I literally put, like, how has no one seen this thing? It just, like, crawls around and is bigger than the hill. And I'm like, well, they are 20 miles out, so maybe it's not going toward the town. It is a desert. Everyone it's seen it's killed. Yeah. So, fine. So he gets there, and the professor is, like, fucked up. Like... His eyes are now, like, on separate fucking planes of existence.
His, like, face is, like, drooping.
It's like as if
he had it's like as if
he had a stroke, but, like, times 10 in terms of, like, the droop factor. Like, one eye is way up at the top of his head, but the other one is, like, at his chin.
The makeup was actually really good.
A little rubbery, but pretty good.
Yeah, but I felt like it actually worked really well.
It did, yeah. I think she screamed because it scared her more.
Yeah, she's totally fine. Like, she came out and met Hastings in the driveway.
Because it doesn't seem to give anyone ill intent. Like, Paul already had the ill intent when he, like, attacked the professor because he was mad at him. So, but, like, the animals never seem to attack anybody other than the tarantula because it's just being a tarantula.
Yeah, it's just
but, like, the rats never attacked anybody. Like, it doesn't seem to make anybody go, like, haywire in the brain. So, it tracks that he didn't want to hurt her. It just scared the shit out of her.
Which, to be fair, if I was on the phone and you came around the corner looking like that, I'd scream.
Yeah. So the doctor injects him with something, we don't know what, and he's like, there's nothing we can do for him. And the professor finally breaks down and he tells Hastings everything because he knows he's going to die.
Yeah.
And what's he telling him?
So he tells Hastings that he was working with Jacob and Paul. And then when he was out of the lab, Jacobs and Paul injected themselves with the isotope.
Yeah. They thought maybe they were like, oh, it's clearly safe enough. We've been working on this for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And they thought, well, maybe we can, if we put it in ourselves, it'll act differently. Who knows?
Yeah, and Deemer was the voice of reason telling them, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
So they actually leave.
Yeah.
They did that 4 days ago. 4 days before.
Yep.
Jacobs died.
Yep. And then Paul injected the doctor before he died. And so the doctor has been, like, really trying to figure it out, like, figure out the nutrient and how, trying to make it stable before he died because he's the one that knows how to make it. He knows what it is, like, whatever he can do. Not necessarily to save himself, but to save, like, the future of humanity, it seems. He's not working on how to cure himself. He knows he's done for.
Yeah. But he wants to make sure all his work doesn't go to waste.
Like, the doctor this whole time has never been, like, the bad guy. He just was, like, trying to keep it hush-hush because he didn't want to scare everybody.
I feel like
he's kind of the bad guy, but he's not really the bad guy. Like, he's not evil.
He's done some shady things, but I wouldn't consider him, a bad guy.
He's not evil. He's also kind of seeing the errors of his ways ever since he got injected. He realizes, like, this is not,
And Deemer tells Hastings about the animals, like this giant guinea pig and this huge rat and this big old tarantula.
This is where the line that I love comes in, because he's like, there's the tarantula, and he goes, well, where's the tarantula? And he goes, the tarantula lost. Like, everything lost.
Yeah.
So he's talking about, like, I lost all the animals, they all died, but the way he says it, it alludes to the fact that the tarantula is lost. Yeah. It's gone.
Deemer thinks that the tarantula burned to death.
And, of course, now Hastings is like, well, okay, like, it's gone, it's dead. He doesn't really know better yet.
But it puts that idea in that mind that there was a giant tarantula.
And now he's
found this venom.
Chekhov's plane, Hastings flies to Phoenix. Because that plane had to come back at some point.
He goes to the Arizona Agriculture Institute.
Yes.
I
have a real question.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know. Shut up. I have a real question for you.
Yeah.
He's flying a plane over the desert. How the hell does he not see that tarantula from the fucking sky?
He flew south and the tarantula north?
He had to have turned at some point. I'm sorry, how? Come on. I can spot a kiddie pool from fucking, this is true. Whenever we fly over Chicago, I can spot like a fucking kiddie pool from 10,000 goddamn feet up, okay? We do. And then whenever we see a kiddie pool, like, if I can spot a goddamn kiddie pool from a turn into the Chicago airport, this man can see a tarantula the size of a building. I'm sorry. Can't tell me otherwise.
Well, kiddie pools are bright blue.
I just realized the light's on.
Yeah.
Oh well. Okay. So
he gets the Arizona Agriculture Institute.
Yep. Why would you... Okay, I have a real question. Also, if you're trying to study spiders or tarantulas, why would you go to the Agriculture Institute?
My guess is that that's like the closest thing you can do, and that they probably deal some sort with insects because they have to deal with agriculture.
Yeah, and but you are in Arizona, and you're in Arizona, hot spot for studying tarantulas and snakes. You would go to like a biology or reptile center, not an agricultural center. They fucking deal with like corn and shit. Like, I just thought it was weird. Anyway, so the guy looks at it and he's like, it's from a tarantula. And then they start showing the tarantula of the South American bird-eating spider, which is a form of tarantula. They do actually get to be the leg span of a foot. Like, that is true.
And I got some big feet.
Mm-hmm. Big and then they mention the things like, they live 20 years. And I'm like, females live 20 years. I start like, yeah, but... then he starts talking about Arizona. This is another, like, we're going to talk about a little bit of tarantulas, because I think the tarantula in the video after the bird-eating tarantula is, in fact, an Arizona blonde for multiple reasons. One, they're in Arizona. Two, the body is much lighter than the legs of the tarantula. Blondes are like a golden yellow color.
I thought you were going to say two. It's blonde.
Yeah. It's hard to tell in black and white. But also he talks about how the venom is in no way harmful. Because when you get bitten by a tarantula, you don't die.
Yeah.
The only deaths that happen are because of bacteria that get into them. That still tracks to this day. Mm. Even the most deadly tarantula, there is a tarantula called I want to say it's called the blue cobalt. And I want to say it's the most, it's the most venomous tarantula in the world. It will not kill you, but it will cause nasty infections that can kill you. But the venom itself does not kill you.
Wasn't it also, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a long time, but wouldn't like the venom like be able to kill like a small child, but not a full-grown adult?
It can, yeah. That does happen. Same with black widow spiders. Black widow spiders and brown widow spiders don't generally kill adults. The brown recluse does not usually kill an adult, but it can absolutely kill a child.
I've seen the Avengers. Black Widow killed a lot of people.
Yeah. Also, he's like, yeah, it's not harmful at all. And Hastings like, it sounds like a pet. And the doctor's like, no, not pets. And I'm like, they make great pets. Get away from me.
He also has the line, the agriculture doctor, of the tarantula doesn't know the meaning of fear.
He does. And that is kind of true, because if you ever look at a tarantula, tarantula don't give a shit.
The tarantula just keeps on trucking throughout the movie.
It does. It crosses a road and it takes out the phone line.
Yeah.
It's like a cut. We cut.
That happened immediately after this.
Mm-hmm, we cut literally from the doctors talking to him, this tarantula taking out the phone line. Then it cuts back to someone trying to make a phone call.
Yep. There's also when they're showing the footage of all the rain shows and stuff, when it cuts back to Hastings and the doctor talking, audio quality significantly changes.
Yeah, it does. So, yeah, it takes out a power line, takes out a phone line, and then it climbs over a hill, and there's I called them cowboys.
I did too!
I didn't know what else to call them. There's these two cowboys on a hill, and they start to run away, and the tarantula's clearly supposed to chase them, but they're sprinting, and it is
moseying.
Walking. It's like, all right, time to go this way. And this is where I was like, they really should have used an old world spider, because old worlds would have sprinted them down.
And then one of the cowboys trips, the other one goes back to help, and they both get eaten by the roaring tarantula.
If that guy had not gone back to help the other guy, he might have made it. I'm just saying.
He went back for his bro. They were lovers.
It's like...
Why else would they be hanging out in the desert in the middle of the night?
They were cowboys, I guess, without any horses.
Because they ride each other.
Brokeback Mountain style. Okay. Again, Hastings flies back. Again, he doesn't see it while flying. Very upsetting. And this time... there's no way you would have fucking missed it. He's flying right towards it. You can't give me that north-south bullshit this time. No!
He's also Hastings is able to call the sheriff, when phone lines down.
The phone lines were... oh, yeah. I was going to say they were down in Phoenix, but no. Maybe? I don't know.
He calls to him, arm your men. Call the state police.
Well, the other thing is, there's more than one phone line. Yeah. I'm sure. I'll take it. But yeah, he's like... we gotta... he doesn't tell the sheriff what they're hunting, by the way. He's just call the police. call the Air Force that's nearby, like, get absolutely everything. So Stephanie goes to check on the professor as Hastings drives again. Determinedly through the desert. Again, I wish I would have counted. I probably could have gone back through my notes and done it.
Probably 6 or 7 times.
Yeah. So the tarantula is outside the house. It be lurking. It's peeping through her windows.
It walks up to the house, and Stephanie's in there.
She's in there. She's like reading her book. She's not looking at the window. She's got like her back kind of turned toward the window.
Yeah.
And she's looking at a book, so I can see how she didn't see it. Even when she got up to check on the professor, came back, sat back down, started reading her book again. Like, fine. But this tarantula walks with purpose. It walks up to the house. And then it starts to look in her window. But when I say look into her window, we're talking like King Kong.
Yeah.
Like leans all the way in, zooms in on an eye, like it is looking for her.
Right up on her.
It's like this tarantula had intent to murder.
That or intent to peep.
Yeah.
He was hoping to see some titty.
Yeah, she's like in her fucking full ass pajamas. This is where you look, she has a ponytail, by the way.
I do remember that now you say that.
But it's outside. It's like, and then it climbs on top of the house. But when it first starts to climb on top of the house, it makes no noise. It does not shake the house at all. You would notice this. It's huge. You would still shake the damn house. This is when it zooms all the way in on one eye, looking through the window. Like, real weird.
And then the house starts to shake.
Then the house shakes and falls down as if...
Now she notices.
So, then it shows the professor waking up, and his face looks like melted Play-Doh.
Yeah, he has definitely seen better days.
The house starts to collapse. The tarantula kicks the professor.
Like a leg comes through, and it...
Like, there's like a leg that... It looks like a leg comes through the roof and toward the professor, but every single time we've seen the Rancho eat somebody, it's been the same shot of it coming down on them with its fangs bared, and it makes the roaring sound, and then it eats them, and they scream. But this was like, I kid you not, like a leg kicked him. It was
that, or he was crushed in the house.
I think he was crushed in the house, but it looked really funny because they put the tarantula's fake leg in the shot, and it looked like its soccer ball kicked
It also kind of looked like the tarantula just got kind of stuck on the roof, like trying to get over the...
Well, I mean, it is a tarantula on top of a miniature. Maybe it did. Who knows? Tarantulas, you may not know this, can't walk over carpet very well. So if they made it out of anything that had any kind of like carpeting material, it may have actually gotten a little stuck. Miniature material is often made out of like a felty type material. It's possible that did actually.
They also did a good thing of having this shot take place at night, so you can't see the house as a miniature. You more see the silhouette.
The problem is because it's so dark, you can't tell where the house begins and the spider ends at times.
Yeah.
Because they made it really dark so that way you couldn't tell it was a miniature. But it looks a little odd because it's super dark. So Stephanie runs down the stairs out of the house. Hastings drives up. She hops in. The tarantula is like slowly making its way downtown toward her. Slowly.
Doing like this slow Jason Voorhees walk.
But again, it's just because it's a real tarantula that they're filming walking across a glass plane that they're then putting miniatures onto so it can climb over them to film it. And then they're projecting it on top of the other film. So that's just how fast that tarantula happens to walk, unfortunately.
I was also wondering if they slowed it down a little bit to give that indication of size.
Honestly, no. Probably not. As a person that has watched many tarantulas walk, that's really about how fast new worlds will go sometimes. They're very slow beings when they want to be.
It did make it feel big.
It did. And it's possible it could have slowed it down, but probably not. It probably just really wanted to go that slowly.
The effects actually looked pretty good with the tarantula, how they shot it.
Yeah.
Most of the time it actually looked pretty good.
Well, they did a really good job of filming it from underneath, because again, it was on a glass plane with miniatures on top of it. Mm-hmm. So that way when it would climb, you could film it from below to make it look bigger.
Yeah.
So, okay, they get in the car, they drive to the desert, they run into the police, and they're like, you two, shoot the Rancho.
Yep, two of the cops hang out.
Why did they have assault rifles?
He told them to call the state police. Use arm your men.
Yeah, but do the state police in Arizona have assault rifles in 1955?
It's Arizona.
Okay. Fair enough. So the tarantula eats those 2 police officers, rest in peace. And they're like, we have to clear the town in 30 minutes, round up all the dynamite, all the napalm, all the bombs, get the Air Force down here, anything you can to blast this thing off the face of the earth.
It's nighttime, so they're going to use dynamite to stop the spiders. Rampage in the dark.
Yeah, that's what they said. So,
elevation.
Okay, so they start to set up the explosives. The tarantula's like coming down the hill at a leisurely stroll, but now it's a little faster. At this point, I wonder if it's a Choco Golden Need, because I think it might have stripes, but again, I can't tell. It's probably just a rose hair, but I thought I saw stripes. I'm fucking crazy. It's black and white. You can't see shit.
I wonder if they had multiple tarantulas.
They did not.
Just the one?
Mm-hmm. There's only this. We're going to unlock another fun fact right now. This is the same tarantula seen 2 years later in The Incredible Shrinking Man. There's only one tarantula. It's just that with the lighting, sometimes it looks a little different.
I just know with a lot of movies with animals, they'll have multiple.
No, this one they only have one tarantula, and 2 years later they used it in The Incredible Shrinking Man.
Huh.
Yep, same one.
More you know.
Yep. So they set off the dynamite.
They put it all on across the road just in case the tarantula follows traffic laws. Thankfully, it does. So.
You're right. Well, they are on the road, so I guess it would stand it, but it doesn't like go around the dynamite. It really just goes straight.
But it does go for them.
Well,
and
tarantulas do tend to just go straight when they want to eat something. They don't like fucking.
They're going for the people.
So
the most direct road is in the road.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know it's all about the boom. And they blow it up, and the dynamite does literally nothing.
It does nothing, which is crazy to me because do you know anything about tarantulas and their exoskeletons?
They're blast resistant.
So spiders, especially tarantulas, we're learning a lot today. They don't have inner skeletons; they have exoskeletons. You ever seen someone drop a tarantula?
No, I'm not a monster.
I'm not either, but let me tell you, you have to be careful when it comes to tarantulas. They're very delicate. If you have a non-arboreal tarantula and you build it an enclosure that's a little too tall, it can fall and die. Like, they are the most, they're a look but don't touch style pet. If you want to handle it, you gotta handle it 2 inches off the table. Because if you don't, it'll fall and die. This thing is dead immediately. I'm sorry. We continue.
It's tough.
Yeah. So, the dynamite does nothing. So they start to drive away. Why do they drive toward the town?
Well, see, my thought was thinking more from a production standpoint of like they've evacuated everyone. Now they can set up a miniature town and have the tarantula crawl over it and get all these cool shots. I was disappointed.
Yeah, that's not what happens at all. Because my thought was like, okay, I got that they evacuated the town, but why did they evacuate the town? Why didn't they just lure the tarantula away from the town? Why did they lure it toward the town?
Because as we've seen, there's only one goddamn road in this desert, and it goes between the lab and the town.
Yeah.
They couldn't go anywhere else.
So the Air Force shows up, and everyone starts to cheer as they start firing rockets at that tarantula. I will tell you a fun fact about this later. I'm not going to tell you to do it now. It's really cool.
They fire like 20 rockets, and like 4 of them hit.
Yeah, and the tarantula does not give a shit about these bombs at all. It's just like, fuck off,
keeps on going.
Bombs, and it's still coming towards the town.
It's even less than the dynamite.
It's still coming towards the town, and then they're like, unleash the napalm. So they light the thing on fire, and now it's dead. It's gone. It's burnt to death.
Burning spider. It looks fucking metal. It looks like an album cover from the 80s.
So all these people are standing in the town. The tarantula has not even reached the town. Yep. It's standing on like the ridge just before it. And it dies. And then we get the end. And it pans out. And Stephanie and the doctor never get together. And
the movie just ends.
They don't kiss. They don't get together. Holy shit, I've never been happier for 2 people to not kiss in a fucking movie.
Despite all the hardcore flirting.
Oh, yeah. So, you want to hear some fun facts?
In a second.
Okay, go on.
Because, boy, that just stopped.
It did. Just ended.
Like, the last line in the movie is like, drop the napalm. And it might even... my notes even like, I think that did it. I guess it did because the movie just ended.
Yep, that's it.
A lot of these movies really just
they kill the monster and end
instantly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which I know still happens in like modern day movies, but at least there's a little bit of.
They usually wrap up a little bit. Like they might have a few lines like, nature and beauty. And
but like I remember
whatever.
Particularly, this one always comes back to me is Kong Skull Island when they kill like what they call skull crawlers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they kill that, and then it's like, yeah, we're all right. And then the helicopters come in, like, yeah, we're getting out of here, and Kong will be the king, and then the movie ends. Right. It's like 2 minutes, but there's something.
Yeah, there's usually some sort of wrap-up epilogue now. Yeah. You don't just get it where it's like, and we're done!
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. Anyway.
But, like, we end seeing the tarantula on fire.
Yeah. Anyway, do you want some fun facts?
Yes, please.
So, do you know who the jet squadron leader in the Air Force was? This is the second uncredited theatrical film of this person.
Who is it?
Clint Eastwood.
Really?
Yep, it's Clint Eastwood. It is also the first of 4 movies in which Clint Eastwood played a pilot. The others being Escapade in Japan in 1957, Lafayette Escadrille in 1958, and Firefox in 1982.
So Clint Eastwood had the last line in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Also, the jets that kill that tarantula are Lockheed P-80s and F-80s Shooting Star aircraft. Do you know what those are famous for?
Flying.
They are the first ever operational jet fighters in the world.
Oh, okay.
They did see very limited service in World War II, but they were huge in the Korean War.
Okay.
Let's see here. I already gave you the fun fact about the 3.6 billion people, but there's one more. You've got a tarantula, you want it to walk. You want it to walk a certain direction. How do you make it walk?
Tease it with a bacon strip.
No, that's Sadie. That's the dog. No, you just kind of blow a little air on it. You just kind of like with like a little air jet, like, and then it'll walk. That's why it probably went at such a slow pace. If you would like put a cricket over here, it would run. But they probably wanted to just be menacing and slow, so that way you could, film it. Because if you had a running tarantula at the time, probably would have been garbo.
Yeah, probably been a lot of blur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, it being slower did kind of help with the menacing.
It helped with the menacing and how big it was. It was just kind of like, and now it slowly goes over here, and now it slowly goes over there. Now it very slowly crawls across this miniature.
But man, I was hoping they would have had some action with it in the town, crawling over things, destroying buildings.
I told you, in my mind, that's what I thought the movie was, because maybe I'm thinking of a different movie. Maybe I'm thinking of 2 movies intercut into each other in my brain, and I thought Tarantula was that movie, but I'm like, oh, so what was that movie? I don't know.
Tarantula? But the question mark is at an exclamation point.
Okay, so how did you feel about this movie? Did you like it?
I enjoyed it, yeah.
I actually really liked this movie.
I did too. I think it's probably the best. Body Snatchers was good too.
Body Snatchers was way better.
Yeah. Body Snatchers was better, but this is still one of the better movies.
Body Snatchers is like, I'm going to say masterpiece to give it a term like people use for movies. Like, Body Snatchers is like classic cinema. Whenever you talk about sci-fi movies, people will eventually bring up Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Invasion of the Body Snatchers gets used time and time again as a plot device. Like, there's a lot of movies that are basically, it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers again.
Yeah.
Tarantula is just another big monster movie of some kind. That's not to say it's bad, but I think Body Snatchers is a better movie.
I agree, yeah.
But damn, if this one ain't actually pretty good.
It was pretty good. Yeah, the acting was good. The effects were good.
Mm-hmm.
Plot was simple, but it was effective.
A lot of these plots in these movies tend to be, okay, human stuff happens. We somehow create a monster. Monster rampages. We have to stop monster.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
A key character dies, and then we kill the monster.
Yeah, but I have to say the sexism in this one might have been some of the worst we've had.
Yeah, it was not great. There's a lot of pseudoscience and a lot of sexism living up to that tagline.
Yeah, and like I said, if you have a radioactive isotope, why would you inject that into animals and think it was a good idea?
Because he's a scientist. He doesn't care about how the animals feel.
Yeah, we also didn't know a lot. Like, we knew radioactivity bad, ? Yeah. Like,
Especially in the 50s.
In the 50s, we didn't have as much as we know now about, like, radioactivity and isotopes and such. So, like, I get it, but at the same time, this might be me, 2021 human, talking about 1955 human, where it's like, why would you do that? And it's like, well, it was 1955.
The rules on testing on animals were a lot different.
Well, that too. The ethics of science were a lot different. The ethics of science were a lot different, but it's also just like we didn't really know all that. Radioactivity, the idea of radioactivity wouldn't have been that old yet. Yeah. So really, to experiment with that kind of makes more sense. This is my future brain thinking on the past, going like, oh my God, on this one.
You think about this movie is like almost 70 years old? Yeah,
we've watched some oldies. Yeah. So, better or worse than the Shrew movie?
Better.
Way better. I think Body Snatchers is the best movie we've watched. This one's probably the second best one we've watched.
I think so, too.
I wish we had, like, a running, list of, like, ranking.
Well, let's see. So, we've only done 5. Let's start it.
Okay. So, here, let me open a document, because I think this is going to be a new thing.
I got a document right here.
Okay. This is going to be a new thing. Let's rank all the films and then make it available somewhere that people can see what we rank them.
We'll put it on our Twitter.
Yeah, sure. And then people can look, and we can decide if it was better or worse than the other movies. I like this idea. Okay.
Okay, so number 1, we got Body Snatchers.
Body Snatchers so far is number 1.
Pretty good there. Number 2 is Rancho.
Yeah, number 2 is Tarantula.
So we got God Monster, Killer Shrews, and Santo versus Riders of Terror.
Santo versus Riders of Terror is at 3, in my opinion. Because that movie, while very bad, was at least entertaining and had some things that were, like, pretty decent about it.
Now, the question is, what was worse? Shrews or God Monster?
So, okay. The production value of God Monster was way worse than Shrews. But as we talked at length about, the idea of the God Monster being the mayor and not the monster was kind of smart and, like, had a cool concept but a terrible execution. Mm-hmm. But Shrews was funnier. Like, fucking, man. Oh, yeah, I also forgot about how sexist Shrews was. That was also very bad. We had, like, did we have women slapping in that movie? I don't remember. I feel like we had one of these movies. No, I don't think we've had anyone slap a woman yet. Maybe we have, and I don't remember. But what do you think?
I'm going to put God Monster above Killer Shrews.
You're going to put God Monster above Shrews? I don't know.
I personally was more entertained by God Monster.
I'll give you that. I think that one was more entertaining. I'm going to agree with you. I think Shrews was probably the worst one because God Monster at least had a somewhat decent idea of a premise that was a little different at the time. And Shrews was just so fucking bad.
For the most part, our ranking is actually the worst. We've been watching better movies as time goes on.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix that.
Oh, no. Oh, no. You kept telling me. So we watched this movie on Amazon Prime because Amazon is a really good spot to, like, rent or buy these movies digitally because sometimes it get really expensive to try to get physical.
I actually found Tarantula on Movies Anywhere.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But you just loaded it on Amazon. Yeah. That's right. Anyway, yeah. Like, Movies Anywhere, Amazon, those tend to be pretty decent spots to find these movies. Because some of these you gotta fucking dig for. Like, I finally have Space Amoeba. We're gonna watch that for my next movie. Like, I'm calling it now. I want to finally watch that again. But please, tell me what your next goddamn movie is.
All right, so the next movie we are going to watch. Mm-hmm. It's also the title of one of my personal favorite Misfits songs.
Oh, no.
We are going to watch Astro Zombies.
No! Why would you do this to me?
We're just touching my burning hands and my Astro Zombies to brave the land.
To be fair...
Proud directive, exterminate, overblood. I sound like Elvis and Clone Music.
To be fair, the last, like, 3 movies we've done have actually been kind of solid, so we need a good, like, real shitty
This movie has, like, a 3 out of 10 on IMDb.
This one had, like, a 6.5, like...
Rotten Tomatoes, this one had like a 94.
Did it? I didn't look at Rotten Tomatoes. It had a pretty good... Yeah, it had a really good rating. Like I said, it was solid. I liked it quite a bit. Had some issues, with women, but a lot of them do, so I just scream about them and move on. I think they're funny. I scream, they're problematic, they're terrible. I do find them funny. I do laugh. Like, when I say, like, I'm really angry and I pause, I'm also laughing a lot of the time. I'm like, you gotta pause it. We gotta hear that line again, because it's killing me. Like, part of the reason I wanted to do these styles of movies was I wanted to look at the fucking sexism in them, because it's just, it kills me. I'm such, like, a modern, like, tattooed, shaved head, like, feminist of a human being, that I'm just like, oh my god. Like, whoo.
I mean, that's why sexism is one of the taglines of the show. Pseudoscience, sexism, and whatever is relevant for the next one.
Because I think I came up with that, didn't I?
I think you did.
I think I did. Because the sexism was like, yeah, we gotta talk about it. It's a big point for me to talk about, because this is gonna be terrible. It gives me joy in a weird way, and like that horrible, like, this is really funny type of way.
Yeah.
Horrible, horrible, horrible things are said and done. But fuck if it doesn't make me laugh.
Alrighty, well, that was a tarantula.
I really liked this one.
I did too.
Okay.
Next up, Astro Zombies.
I have heard tales. That's about it.
You know why I picked this movie? Because I like the Misfits song. I know nothing about this movie, but I bought it for $4 on Amazon.
Oh, you paid too much. I'm sure.
Yep.
Alright, well, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yep. We're going to get things back on track now that we are not moving and can speak. Still coughing a bit, but hopefully that cough will be there next time.
I hope not. It'll be 2 weeks from now. Well, depending on when we record this, it could be 3 days from now. It could be...
Hopefully I can edit out most of those. Follow us on the socials. Check the description. And you can listen to us on Spotify, too, if you're watching this on YouTube.
Wow.
Go over there and listen to it, so you can listen to it as you drive.
Or cook, or shit, or why am I obsessed with shitting on the show?
Do you need to tell me something? Like, do you need to use the bathroom?
I do, actually.
Alright, well, as Caitlin goes and takes a poop, this has been Gus. That's been Caitlin. She is standing up. Her cheeks are in need of pooping.
Don't tell them that.
I told them that. Thanks for watching. Or listening. Listening, I should say.
Bye.
She's going to go poop. I'm going to go do something else. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.